The mysterious stranger. Ethan Parker lived a quiet, uneventful life in a small town surrounded by endless fields and tall trees. At 32, he worked as a mechanic in the only garage for miles. His days were long, greasy, and repetitive, but his evenings brought a comforting silence. He valued the stillness of his little house at the edge of the town, a place where no one disturbed him. One chilly evening, Ethan returned home after a tiring day. He dropped his keys on the kitchen counter and kicked off his boots. As he opened the fridge to grab a drink, something felt off. The carton of milk wasn't where he'd left it the morning before, and a loaf of bread was now sitting on the counter, half opened. Ethan frowned. "I must have been too tired to notice," he muttered to himself. But the odd feeling didn't go away. He shrugged it off, sat down in his living room, and turned on the TV. The screen blinked to life, but instead of the channel he always left it on, it showed a strange static-filled broadcast. A faint buzzing sound came from the speakers. Ethan tried changing the channel, but it wouldn't respond. Annoyed, he unplugged the TV and went to bed, chalking it up to an electrical glitch. The next morning, things got even weirder. Ethan found his front door unlocked. He was certain he'd locked it the night before. A chair in the kitchen was slightly out of place, as if someone had sat there. And the fridge was left ajar, the cold air slowly seeping out. "This is getting ridiculous," Ethan muttered. "Did I forget to lock up? Maybe I'm just losing it." Still, unease crept into his thoughts as he went about his day. Was someone sneaking into his house? He decided to take action. After work, Ethan stopped by the hardware store and bought a small security camera. That evening, he set it up in the living room, facing the main door and part of the kitchen. It wasn't fancy, but it would do the job. He wanted answers. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan sat in his living room, sipping coffee and pretending to watch TV. His mind kept drifting back to the strange occurrences. He stayed up later than usual, hoping to catch any sign of intruders. But as midnight passed, the house remained silent. Eventually, his eyelids grew heavy, and he went to bed, leaving the camera rolling. Around 3 a.m., a faint sound woke him up. It was soft, like the shuffle of feet on a carpet. Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Was someone inside his house? He grabbed the baseball bat he kept under his bed and crept out of his room. The house was dark, but moonlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows on the floor. Ethan moved slowly, his grip on the bat tightening with every step. The sound came again, this time from the living room. When he turned the corner, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, standing by the couch, was a woman. She was tall and slender, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. But something about her was wrong. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly under the moonlight, and her eyes glowed an unnatural shade of blue. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "How did you get in here?" The woman didn't answer. She just stood there, staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Was it fear? Curiosity? He couldn't tell. "Answer me," Ethan shouted, raising the bat slightly. He was terrified but determined not to let it show. "I'll call the cops." The woman tilted her head, as if trying to understand his words. Then, without a sound, she took a step back and vanished. Ethan blinked, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. One moment, she was there. The next, she was gone, as if she had never existed. He looked around frantically, checking every corner of the room. There was no sign of her. He rushed to check the camera. His hand shook as he played back the footage. To his shock, the video showed nothing. No movement, no figure, nothing. It was as if the woman hadn't been there at all. Ethan slumped into a chair, his heart still racing. "What the hell is going on?" he whispered to himself. As he sat there, trying to make sense of the impossible, his eyes fell on the coffee table. There was something on it that hadn't been there before, a small metallic object. It looked like a smooth, polished stone, but it was glowing faintly, just like the woman's eyes. Ethan picked it up carefully. It was warm to the touch, and he felt a strange hum vibrating through his fingers. This wasn't normal. This wasn't human. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt the weight of something far bigger than himself. Whoever, or whatever, that woman was, she wasn't just a burglar. And she wasn't from around here. She's not human. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his dimly lit living room, the small metallic object still in his hand. The strange, warm hum pulsed through his fingers, making his skin tingle. It wasn't just an ordinary object. It felt alive. He placed it on the coffee table and stepped back, his mind racing. The woman had vanished right in front of him. That wasn't normal. That wasn't human. Ethan paced the room, rubbing his temples. Maybe he was losing his mind. Maybe stress and exhaustion were playing tricks on him. He had seen horror movies where people hallucinate under pressure. But deep down, he knew this was real. He checked every door and window, making sure they were locked. Then he went back to the camera footage. Fast-forwarding through the recording, he saw nothing unusual. No mysterious woman, no sudden movement, but he had seen her with his own eyes. He rewound the video, frame by frame. There was a moment, just a flicker, where the air in his living room seemed to ripple, like heat waves rising from asphalt. But it was too quick, too subtle. If he hadn't been watching carefully, he would have missed it. "What the hell is happening?" Ethan muttered. He leaned forward, staring at the glowing object on his table. His instincts told him to throw it away, to get rid of anything connected to that strange woman. But another part of him, his curiosity, his need for answers, kept him rooted to the spot. Then the object blinked. Ethan jumped back. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder. The object's glow brightened, shifting between deep blue and silver. Ethan felt a pulse of warmth in his chest, like an invisible force pulling him forward. And then a voice spoke. "Do not be afraid." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He whipped his head around, searching for the source of the voice. But he was alone. The voice wasn't loud. It was soft, almost like a whisper in his mind. It wasn't coming from his phone, his TV, or the security camera. It was coming from the object. "You are not in danger," the voice continued. "Not yet." Ethan swallowed hard. His fingers twitched toward the object, but he hesitated. "Who are you?" he asked aloud, his voice hoarse. No response. He gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" he repeated, louder this time. The hum deepened. The object vibrated slightly against the table. And then a figure appeared. Not physically, not like before. This time, it was a projection, a shimmering, translucent image forming in the air just above the object. It was her, the woman from before. Ethan took a step back, his pulse hammering. She looked just as she had in his living room. Tall, slender, glowing faintly with an unearthly light. Her blue eyes locked onto his, but this time, they weren't filled with fear. They were filled with understanding. "Ethan Parker," she said. Ethan's stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" The projection flickered, as if struggling to remain stable. "I have been observing you." His fingers curled into fists. "Observing me? Why? Who are you?" The woman hesitated. Then, with a slight bow of her head, she spoke. "My name is Aria. I am not from your world." Ethan let out a dry laugh. "No kidding." Aria's expression remained calm. "I had no choice but to hide in your home. I needed shelter." "From who?" Ethan asked. She glanced toward the darkened windows, as if sensing something outside. "From them." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. He didn't ask who they were, but he already knew it wasn't good. He forced himself to breathe. "Okay, let's say I believe you. What do you want from me?" Aria's projection flickered again, her form becoming unstable. "You are not supposed to be involved," she admitted. "But now, They know you have seen me. And that means you are in danger. Ethan's blood turned cold. Danger? What kind of danger? Before she could answer, the lights in his house flickered. Then, a loud thud outside. Ethan's body went rigid. Something was outside. Aria's form wavered. "They're here," she whispered. Ethan's breathing quickened. He ran to the window and peeked through the blinds. His backyard was pitch black, but there was movement. Something big was standing at the edge of the yard, a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Ethan's grip on the blinds tightened. "What the hell is that?" Aria's voice was urgent now. "You need to leave. Now." Ethan turned back to the projection. "Leave? This is my house." The creature outside took a step forward. The ground seemed to shake beneath its weight. Aria's projection flickered violently. "Ethan." The power in the house cut out. Everything went black. A deep, inhuman growl echoed through the night. And then, a knock on the door. Not a normal knock. A slow, deliberate, heavy knock. Ethan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He reached for the baseball bat again, his hand shaking. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Another knock. Then, a voice. Deep, unnatural, vibrating with something otherworldly. "We know you're in there, human." Ethan's blood ran cold. And for the first time in his life, he realized he was no longer alone on Earth. The hidden truth, the world outside, was silent. Too silent. Ethan stood frozen in his darkened living room, his back pressed against the wall. The baseball bat in his hands felt useless against whatever was lurking outside. His house, once his safe space, now felt like a trap. The knock came again, slow, deliberate, and unearthly. "We know you're in there, human." The voice sent a sharp, icy fear down Ethan's spine. It wasn't just the sound of it. It was the way it vibrated in his chest, like a low-frequency hum that unsettled something deep inside him. He turned his head towards Aria's projection, which was flickering erratically on the coffee table. "Who are they?" he whispered, barely able to control the tremor in his voice. Aria's form flickered violently, as if she was fighting interference. "You need to run," she said. Ethan clenched his jaw. "Run? Where the hell am I supposed to go?" Boom. The front door shook, as if something massive had struck it. The force of it rattled the walls. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. "They won't wait much longer," Aria said urgently. "They have found me. And now they will not leave without you." Ethan's mind raced. "What do they want with me? I don't know anything." Aria's projection flickered again, and her blue eyes locked onto his. "But you have seen me. That is enough." Another thud against the door. The wood groaned under the pressure. Ethan swallowed hard. What happens if they get in? Aria hesitated. "You don't want to find out." Ethan's grip tightened on the bat. Great. He scanned the room, his mind working fast. His house had one other exit, the back door. But if they were at the front, would they have the back covered too? He wasn't sure. He moved quietly, creeping toward the kitchen, his breath shallow. The air inside his house felt thick, like the pressure before a thunderstorm. Then, the front door handle twisted. Ethan stopped mid-step. They were trying to get in. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then went still. A terrible silence followed. And then, the door exploded inward. Wood splintered. A gust of cold air rushed in, swirling the dust in the air. The impact sent a shockwave through the house. Ethan barely had time to react before he saw them. 3 towering figures stepped through the shattered doorway. Their bodies were humanoid but wrong, their limbs too long, their movements too precise. Their skin was dark, like polished obsidian, but their eyes glowed a burning, unnatural red. They wore sleek, black armor, and something like a metallic exoskeleton lined their bodies. Ethan didn't need to ask if they were human. They weren't. The tallest one stepped forward. It tilted its head slightly, examining the room. Then, its burning red eyes locked onto Ethan. "You have seen her," it said, its voice layered, as if multiple voices spoke at once. Ethan's muscles tensed. He took a slow step backward. The creature's head twitched. "You will come with us." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Yeah, and if I don't?" The alien's body shifted, and from its arm, a blade-like weapon extended, humming with an eerie blue light. Ethan didn't wait. He turned and ran. He sprinted toward the kitchen, knocking over a chair behind him as he moved. He heard the creatures react. Fast, sharp footsteps hitting the floor, coming after him. He reached the back door, grabbed the handle, and locked. His own damn habit of keeping doors secured was about to kill him. His fingers fumbled with the lock, but before he could twist it, a heavy hand grabbed his shoulder. Ethan twisted violently, swinging the baseball bat with full force. Crack cake. The bat hit one of the creatures in the side of the head. It barely reacted. It simply turned its glowing red eyes toward him, and for the first time, Ethan saw its mouth. A slow, unnatural grin spread across its face. Then it grabbed the bat and crushed it in its hand. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "Enough," the creature growled. "You will comply." Ethan braced for impact, for pain, for anything. But then, a flash of blue light streaked across the room. The creature that had grabbed him suddenly lurched backward, an unnatural, distorted sound escaping from its throat. Sparks erupted from its armor as it collapsed to the ground. Ethan turned in shock. Arya stood there. Not a projection, not a flickering image. The real her. She moved fast, faster than any human. Before the other two creatures could react, she raised her hand, and from her palm, a bright energy pulse erupted. It struck the second creature in the chest, sending it flying into the wall. The third alien lunged at her, blades extended. But Arya dodged effortlessly, twisting through the air like liquid motion. She landed behind it and pressed something against the back of its neck. A sharp whine filled the air. The creature collapsed instantly. Ethan stood there, panting, his mind reeling. Arya turned to him. "We have to leave. Now." Ethan stared at the fallen creatures, his hands still trembling. "What the hell are they?" Arya didn't answer immediately. She stepped forward, grabbing his wrist, pulling him toward the door. "We don't have time for questions," she said. "More will come." Ethan yanked his arm free. "No, you tell me what's going on. Now." Arya met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Then with a slow breath, she said, "They are hunters, and they have been tracking me for weeks." Ethan swallowed. "Why?" Arya hesitated. Then, "Because I stole something from them." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Stole what?" She looked at him, her glowing blue eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. "The truth." The chase begins. The room still smelled like burning metal. The bodies of the alien hunters lay motionless on the floor, their sleek black armor reflecting the dim light. The air felt heavy, charged with the lingering energy of Arya's attacks. Ethan's mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. His house had been invaded by aliens, and now a glowing woman who had been hiding in his home was telling him they had to run. "This is insane," Ethan muttered, running a hand through his hair. This doesn't happen to normal people." Arya didn't respond. She was already moving, grabbing a small silver device from one of the fallen hunters. As she pressed a button on it, a series of strange symbols lit up on its surface. She turned to Ethan, her expression tense. "More of them will be here soon." Ethan's stomach twisted. "How do you know that?" Arya held up the device. "This was transmitting a signal. It sent out a distress call the moment they entered your house." Ethan's pulse quickened. He looked back at the creatures on the floor, suddenly realizing, if more were coming, he had no time to waste. Arya moved toward him quickly, grabbing his arm. "We need to leave now." Ethan hesitated. "Where?" Where the hell do you think we're gonna go? She looked toward the broken front door, her expression unreadable. Somewhere safe. Ethan huffed. Lady, I don't know if you noticed, but we just got attacked by goddamn aliens. Nowhere is safe. Aria's glowing blue eyes locked onto his. We don't have a choice. Then, without another word, she pulled him forward. Ethan barely had time to react before they were moving fast. They burst through the kitchen door into the backyard. The night air was cold against Ethan's skin, and the stars above looked disturbingly clear, like the universe itself was watching them. A low humming sound filled the air. Aria stopped abruptly, her head snapping up. No. Ethan followed her gaze. Above them, something massive moved in the sky. A ship. It wasn't like anything Ethan had ever seen before. It was sleek and dark, almost invisible against the night sky, except for the faint red symbols glowing along its hull. It hovered just above the treetops, silent, but terrifyingly present. Then, a beam of red light shot down toward them. Move-y, Aria shouted. Ethan didn't have time to think. He sprinted toward the tree line as the ground behind him exploded, sending dirt and debris flying. The force of the blast nearly knocked him off his feet. Aria was already ahead of him, her movements impossibly fast, weaving through the trees like she had done this 1,000 times before. Ethan forced his legs to move, adrenaline surging through his veins. Branches whipped past his face. The sound of the hovering ship followed them. Then, from above, figures dropped from the ship. Ethan barely had time to register them before one of them landed just a few feet in front of him. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground. The figure straightened. Another one of those hunters. Its glowing red eyes locked onto Ethan. Then, without hesitation, it charged. Ethan barely managed to throw himself sideways as the creature lunged. The force of the movement sent him rolling down a small hill, his body colliding with the rough earth. Ethan. Aria's voice called out. Dizzy! Ethan pushed himself up just in time to see the hunter coming for him again, its weapon extended, sharp, glowing, and very lethal. A blue flash cut through the air. Aria tackled the creature before it could reach Ethan. A pulse of energy erupted from her hands, sending the hunter flying backward. Ethan gasped for breath, staring at her. You really don't play around, do you? Aria turned, her expression fierce. Get up. We have to keep moving. Ethan forced himself to his feet. His entire body ached, but he wasn't about to argue. The ship above was still circling, its searchlights scanning the trees. Where the hell are we even going? Ethan asked as they ran. Aria didn't look back. To someone who can help. Ethan groaned. That's not an answer. Then, ahead of them, Ethan saw something. A vehicle, hidden behind the trees. It wasn't a normal car. It looked futuristic, smooth, metallic, with glowing blue accents along its frame. Aria rushed toward it and placed her hand on the side. The vehicle hummed to life. Ethan skidded to a stop, panting. Okay, what is that? She turned toward him. Our escape. She reached for the door, but before she could open it, a bright red beam of energy shot through the trees and hit her square in the back. Ethan's eyes widened. Aria. She collapsed to the ground. Ethan rushed toward her, panic surging in his chest. The ship above descended lower, its weapons now fully powered. The hunters were closing in. Ethan dropped to his knees beside Aria. Come on, get up. She groaned, her body shaking. The blast hadn't killed her, but she was injured. Badly. The air around them grew hotter as the enemy closed in. Ethan looked up. The hunters were moving through the trees. They were surrounding them. His heart pounded. He looked at Aria, then at the strange vehicle. He had no choice. Gritting his teeth, Ethan grabbed Aria under the arms and dragged her toward the vehicle. The hunters started running toward them. Ethan threw open the door and shoved Aria inside. Then, without thinking, he jumped into the driver's seat. There were no keys. No buttons, just a smooth console with glowing symbols. Ethan had no idea what he was doing, but he also knew he had seconds before they were dead. He slammed his hand down on the dashboard. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the vehicle roared to life. The dashboard lit up with symbols Ethan couldn't understand. The air around them crackled with energy. The engines hummed with a sound unlike anything on Earth. Ethan gripped the controls. All right, let's hope this thing flies. Outside, the hunters were just feet away. Ethan hit the largest glowing button he could find. The vehicle shot forward like a bullet. The force slammed him back against the seat. Trees blurred past them at impossible speed. The ship above reacted instantly, turning to pursue. Ethan clenched his jaw. He glanced at Arya, who was barely conscious in the passenger seat. "Just hang in there," he muttered. "I have a feeling this night is about to get even worse." The attack. The vehicle roared through the forest, dodging trees at breakneck speed. Ethan gripped the controls, his knuckles white, his heart hammering in his chest. He had no idea how he was driving this thing. It wasn't even a normal car. The glowing symbols on the dashboard meant nothing to him, but somehow his instincts were guiding him. Beside him, Arya slumped against the seat, her breathing ragged. The red blast she had taken had left a charred mark on her shoulder, her skin slightly smoking. She wasn't unconscious, but she wasn't far from it either. Ethan glanced at her, panic tightening his throat. "Hey, stay with me, all right?" Arya's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dim interior of the vehicle. "You don't know how to fly this, do you?" she whispered. Ethan let out a strained laugh. "Nope, no idea." She tried to sit up, wincing from the pain. The hunters, they won't stop. As if on cue, the ship above them fired another shot. A red energy beam tore through the trees just behind them, sending flames bursting into the night sky. The shockwave lifted the back of the vehicle for a second before Ethan managed to regain control. "Yeah, I noticed," he yelled. Ahead, the forest opened up into a wide, empty highway. Ethan pushed the vehicle forward, bursting onto the road at full speed. The ship above them descended lower, its engines howling like an unnatural beast. Ethan stole a glance through the windshield. He could see the hunters standing inside, watching him from behind sleek glass panels. They weren't just following. They were studying him. Ethan gritted his teeth. "What do they want from you?" Arya's voice was weak but determined. "They don't want me, Ethan. They want what I stole." Ethan stole a quick glance at her. "And what the hell did you steal?" She hesitated for a moment before finally answering. "The truth about Earth." Ethan's stomach clenched. The truth. He had 100 more questions, but right now he had bigger problems. The ship above them began deploying drones. Small, sleek machines detached from the hull, diving toward them with frightening speed. They spread out in formation, their glowing red sensors locking onto the vehicle. Ethan's grip on the controls tightened. "Tell me this thing has weapons." Arya coughed, shaking her head. "No, it's a transport vessel, not a fighter." Ethan groaned. "Fantastic." The drones opened fire. Bright streaks of energy rained down around them, leaving deep craters in the asphalt. Sparks flew as one shot grazed the side of the vehicle, making it sputter and shudder violently. Ethan cursed. "We're sitting ducks here." Arya forced herself upright, pressing her palm against the dashboard. Her fingers glowed faintly, and suddenly, new symbols flashed onto the screen. She exhaled weakly. Manual control disabled. Switching to AI guidance. Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" Suddenly, the steering wheel vanished from his hands. The vehicle lurched forward, accelerating on its own. Ethan yelped, trying to grab onto anything for support. "What the hell is happening?" Arya let out a strained breath. "I let the ship take over." Ethan clenched his teeth. "Could have warned me first." The vehicle suddenly swerved left, then right, moving in ways no normal car should. It was dodging the drone fire with inhuman precision. The drones adjusted their approach, but the AI was faster. It navigated through the incoming blasts, ducking, weaving, and outmaneuvering them at impossible speeds. Ethan felt like he was inside a fighter jet, not a car. But the enemy wasn't giving up. The mothership above began charging something. A low hum filled the air. The red glow beneath the ship grew brighter. Aria's eyes widened. EMP pulse. If they fire it, we're dead. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. You want to tell me what I'm supposed to do about that? Aria's glowing fingers moved across the dashboard, accessing hidden controls. Her breathing was ragged, and sweat beaded on her forehead. She was still weak, but she refused to stop fighting. Then, a new alarm started blaring inside the vehicle. Aria's expression darkened. They've locked onto us. They're going to fire. Ethan clenched his fists. Not if we get the hell out of here first. He scanned the road ahead. They needed cover, something to block the attack. But they were out in the open, nothing but empty highway stretching for miles. Then he saw it. A tunnel. Just a few hundred yards ahead. Ethan pointed at it. Can this thing make it in time? Aria nodded weakly. Ethan didn't wait. He slammed his hand down on the dashboard. Then punch it. The AI responded instantly. The vehicle surged forward at a terrifying speed, closing the distance in seconds. The air around them sizzled with energy. The ship above was about to fire. The tunnel was seconds away. The red glow from the mothership peaked. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. Come on. Boom. The mothership fired. A massive pulse of red energy streaked toward them, the sheer force of it causing the very air to distort and ripple. At the last possible second, the vehicle plunged into the tunnel. The EMP blast detonated just behind them, sending a shockwave of destruction across the road. The sky itself seemed to shatter as the pulse spread out, disabling every electronic system within miles. The mothership flickered. Its drones collapsed, falling from the sky like dead insects. The red glow snuffed out. But inside the tunnel, Ethan and Aria were still alive. Ethan exhaled, slumping back against the seat, his heart threatening to beat out of his chest. Holy shit. Aria coughed beside him, her voice barely above a whisper. You did it. Ethan let out a breathless laugh. No, we did it. The tunnel was dark, but they were safe. For now. Ethan looked over at Aria, watching as she fought to keep her eyes open. We need to get you help, he said, determination hardening his voice. Aria's lips parted, her voice weak. We need to get to the resistance. Ethan's stomach clenched. The resistance. She nodded slowly. They're the only ones who can stop this, before it's too late. Ethan swallowed hard. His life had changed in a matter of hours. He had no idea what he was stepping into. But one thing was clear. This fight wasn't over. And he was now part of it. The ultimate revelation. The tunnel stretched out in front of them, its darkness swallowing the vehicle's soft blue glow. The hum of the engine was the only sound filling the space, broken occasionally by Aria's ragged breathing. Ethan gripped the controls tightly, his mind still racing from what had just happened. He had just escaped death. Alien hunters had invaded his home. A massive ship had nearly wiped him off the map. And now he was driving a futuristic vehicle through a tunnel, carrying a wounded alien woman who had just told him they needed to find the resistance. His life had gone from boring to completely insane in a matter of hours. He exhaled, glancing at Aria. Her glowing skin had dimmed slightly, her breathing shallow. The red energy blast she had taken earlier had left a burned, smoldering wound on her shoulder. She needed help. Fast. Ethan swallowed. Hey, you still with me? Aria's eyes flickered open. Her glowing blue gaze was weaker now, but still sharp. I'm here. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering console. You said we need to find the resistance. Who the hell are they? Arya took a shaky breath. The last hope your planet has. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had a million questions, but he forced himself to ask the most important one first. What did you mean when you said you stole the truth about Earth? Arya turned her head slightly, looking at him. For a moment, there was silence. Then she spoke. Ethan, Earth is not what you think it is. Ethan frowned. Yeah, I got that part. We just got chased by aliens. But what does that have to do with the truth? Arya closed her eyes for a second, as if gathering the strength to explain. Then she continued. Your world is not alone. It never was. Humanity was never meant to be ignorant of the stars. But you were kept in the dark. Ethan's breath hitched. What do you mean kept in the dark? Arya's gaze was steady now. Your planet was never free. It has been controlled, monitored, experimented on, for centuries. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle into his chest like a heavy stone. Controlled by who? Arya hesitated. Then she whispered, the Dominion. Ethan's skin prickled at the name. The ones who were chasing us. Arya nodded. They are the enforcers, but they do not rule. They serve something far worse. Ethan's throat was dry. Then, who does? Arya's voice dropped lower. A force older than your civilization. A force that has been guiding humanity's fate from the shadows. Ethan clenched his fists. That's insane. If Earth was being controlled, someone would have noticed. Governments, scientists. Hell, people would have seen something. Arya let out a weak chuckle. And what happens when someone does, Ethan? What happens to those who claim to see too much? Who speak of things no one else understands? Ethan swallowed hard. They disappear. His mind flashed to conspiracy theories, missing scientists, secret projects whispered about in dark corners of the internet. Arya sighed, wincing from the pain. Your world is a controlled experiment. The people in power. Some of them know. But even they answer to something they don't understand. Ethan shook his head, struggling to wrap his mind around it. And you? You said you stole something. What exactly did you take? Arya exhaled, her hand glowing faintly as she reached into the pocket of her suit. When she pulled her hand out, she held a small, cube-shaped device. It was no bigger than Ethan's palm. The edges pulsed with soft blue light, and strange alien markings shifted across its surface, as if the object was alive. Ethan stared at it. What is that? Arya's grip tightened around it. This is proof. Ethan's heart pounded. Proof of what? She looked up at him, her expression deadly serious. Proof that Earth is scheduled for extermination. Silence. Ethan's blood ran cold. I'm sorry, what? Arya's eyes darkened. The Dominion does not simply control planets, Ethan. They harvest them. When a civilization reaches a certain point, they erase it and start again. Ethan's stomach twisted. You're saying they're going to wipe out Earth? Arya nodded slowly. It has already begun. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. If something like that was happening, we'd. A deep rumbling shook the tunnel. Ethan's words caught in his throat. What the hell was that? Arya's expression hardened. They found us. Ethan's gut clenched. He gripped the controls, pushing the vehicle forward. How? We disabled their ship. Arya's blue eyes glowed faintly. They are more relentless than you can imagine. Then, a bright light filled the tunnel behind them. Ethan stole a glance at the side mirror, and his blood ran cold. The Dominion hunters were back. Sleek black vehicles, hovering above the ground, were streaking down the tunnel at impossible speeds. Their red lights pulsed with energy, illuminating the dark walls. Then, they opened fire. Bright red energy blasts shot past Ethan's vehicle, smashing into the tunnel walls. The entire structure shook violently, chunks of concrete breaking away. Ethan gritted his teeth. This just keeps getting better. Aria pressed her palm against the dashboard again. More alien symbols appeared, flashing rapidly. Ethan saw something new on the screen. A map. It showed the tunnel's layout. And an exit coming up fast. Aria's voice was urgent. When we reach the exit, turn left. We're going off-road. Ethan's eyes widened. What? Are you crazy? We're going nearly 200 miles an hour. Aria gave him a sharp look. Do you trust me? Ethan hesitated. The rational part of his brain screamed no. But something deep inside him, something instinctual, whispered yes. He took a breath. Then he nodded. Fine. But if we die, I'm haunting you. Aria smirked. Noted. The exit loomed ahead. The hunters were closing in. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. The moment they hit the tunnel's end, he yanked the vehicle hard to the left. The world blurred. The vehicle nearly tipped, skidding wildly across rocky terrain. Ethan fought against the controls, keeping them from flipping over. The Dominion vehicles weren't so lucky. The sudden turn caught them off guard. Two of them slammed into each other, exploding in a fiery crash. Ethan barely had time to celebrate. Aria was already focused ahead. We're close, she murmured. Ethan frowned. Close to what? Aria's eyes locked onto his. The last human stronghold. Ethan's pulse quickened. The resistance. The real fight was about to begin. The final stand. The wind howled through the open terrain as Ethan's stolen alien vehicle sped across the rugged, uneven ground. The rocky landscape stretched for miles, illuminated only by the twin moons hovering in the star-speckled sky. The Dominion hunters were no longer in sight, but Ethan knew they were still out there, tracking, hunting, closing in. His grip on the controls was firm, but his mind was anything but steady. His world had changed overnight. Aliens existed. Earth was not free. And worse, it was scheduled for extermination. Beside him, Aria struggled to stay conscious. Her breathing was shallow, her glowing blue skin dimming. The wound on her shoulder pulsed with dark energy, and even though she was trying to remain strong, Ethan could tell she was in bad shape. Hang in there, he muttered, scanning the road ahead. You said we're close. How close? Aria's lips barely moved. 5 miles. Ethan exhaled sharply. Good, because you're not dying on me, all right. Aria let out a weak chuckle. That is not my plan. Then, out of nowhere, a voice crackled through the vehicle speakers. Unidentified craft. This is Resistance Outpost Theta. You are entering restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately. Ethan blinked. Whoa, what? Who is that? Aria forced herself upright, reaching toward the dashboard. She pressed her palm against it, and the symbols changed. Resistance. This is Aria. Priority Alpha Code X. Authorization Solus. Request immediate clearance and medical assistance. Silence. Then, Aria? It can't be. You were reported dead. Ethan's stomach clenched. He glanced at Aria. That's not comforting. Aria's gaze was firm. I'm alive, and I have what we need. Stand by. We're opening the gates. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, but when they crossed the final ridge, he saw it. A massive underground facility built into the side of a mountain. At first glance, it was nothing but rock and dirt. But then, the ground itself shifted. A huge metal structure emerged, revealing an entrance large enough to swallow their entire vehicle. Giant automated turrets rotated toward them, scanning for threats, before retreating as the ship's AI recognized them as friendly. Ethan let out a low whistle. Okay, I'll admit, that's pretty damn cool. The vehicle descended into the base. As soon as they landed, a team of resistance members rushed forward. Men and women, humans, clad in dark armored uniforms, surrounded them. Some held weapons unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, while others hurried forward with medical supplies. A man with a scared face and piercing gray eyes stepped forward. his expression unreadable. Area. His voice was laced with disbelief. You're actually alive. Area coughed but managed a weak smile. Miss me, Commander. The man, Commander Voss, exhaled sharply. Not the time for jokes. We thought you were dead. He glanced at Ethan. And who the hell is this? Ethan raised his hands. Trust me, I'd love to know that myself. Voss narrowed his eyes. Did you bring him here? Area nodded. He saved my life. And he's seen the truth. The moment she said those words, the mood shifted. The resistance fighters stiffened. Their eyes locked onto Ethan, filled with suspicion. Voss studied him for a long moment before saying, Get her to the med bay. Now. Two medics carefully lifted Area from the vehicle. She winced, but didn't resist. Ethan watched her go, feeling the strange twist in his chest. She had dragged him into this. And yet, he wasn't mad. He was in this now. Voss turned back to him. You. Come with me. Ethan hesitated. Yeah, sure. But maybe someone could tell me what the hell is actually going on. Voss gave him a sharp look. Oh, you're about to find out. The truth about Earth. Ethan followed Voss through a series of metallic corridors, the air thick with tension. Resistance fighters moved past them, their faces grim. The deeper they went, the more Ethan realized this wasn't just a base. It was a war front. They entered a large war room, filled with glowing holographic maps of Earth. Red markers were scattered across the globe. Ethan frowned. What are those? Voss folded his arms. Sites of Dominion activity. Ethan's blood ran cold. Wait, you mean they're already here? Voss nodded. They've been here for decades. Monitoring. Studying. Preparing. Ethan stepped closer, his heart pounding. Then why hasn't anyone noticed? The government, the military, someone. Voss sighed. Because most of them are compromised. Ethan's mind reeled. What? Voss's expression hardened. The Dominion doesn't just invade. They infiltrate. They control governments, corporations, entire civilizations. From the inside. By the time the people realize the truth, it's too late. Ethan felt a wave of nausea. Jesus. So what's their plan? Just take over? Voss looked him dead in the eye. No, they're going to wipe Earth clean. Ethan's breath hitched. Area wasn't lying, Voss continued. The Dominion harvests planets. When a species reaches a certain level of development, they decide whether it's worth integrating into their empire or exterminating. Ethan felt his hands clench into fists. And they've already decided, haven't they? Voss nodded. Earth's destruction has been scheduled. The process has already begun. Ethan swallowed hard. And how much time do we have? Voss was silent for a long moment. Then he said, 2 weeks. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. 2 weeks. That was all the time humanity had left. He turned to face the glowing map of Earth, his mind racing. This wasn't just some crazy conspiracy anymore. This was real. He had 2 choices. Run or fight. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then, he turned back to Voss. All right, he said. Tell me what I need to do. Voss studied him, then smirked. Welcome to the war. And just like that, Ethan Parker, an ordinary mechanic, had become humanity's last hope.